of all, so you know, this is a recorded session. So if you need to go back later to get any of the details that have been spoken about or talked about, you can certainly go back and review those. And the other sessions that we've done prior are also in the library, and I think they're really good to go back and take a look at to get a different angle, a different idea, different thoughts, a different approach of how people, how companies, how individuals actually go about pricing their projects, because they're also different. It's also custom, as you know. And at the end of the day, you want to be able to do this in such a way where there's a fair amount of profit, and you've learned something, and you're able to grow your business from all of those experiences. So with that, I want to welcome Carrie Melnick, who's from Mountain High Sign and Design in Colorado. Carrie has agreed to share today, which I'm excited about because she's done some really cool projects already in her short tenure in business. Carrie, I believe you started in 2022. Is that correct?
November 2022, yeah.
Okay, towards the very end of the year. So you got that tax write-off. Terrific. I like to hear that. Smart move on your part.
Yeah.
So what we'll do real quick before you share the information about you and your company and where you're at. Let's go around the board here real quick, and as others come on, we'll grab them too. So Dan, if you will, share with everybody who you are, what you are, where you are, what is going on in Indianapolis.
Hi, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dan Lucarelli. I own Indy Sign Factory in Indianapolis, Indiana. It's starting to get cold here, so that's about all that is new.
That's about all you're going to share, huh? All right. Okay. Eric, how about you?
Yeah, so Eric Squire, I'm probably one of the newest people on the call here. I'm in Arizona Custom Sign Works, signed my contract in August. Got my lease going a week ago Monday, and just running and gunning as fast as I can right now. Plan is to be technically fully open by January 1st.
Good luck.
Very good. All right. Jim Hawk.
My name's Jim Hawk. I own Greenville Signs here in East Tennessee. We're actually in Greenville, Tennessee. Our Greenville's spelled different than all the other Greenvilles in the country, so it has the extra E at the end of green. We have to remind everybody of that, even locally, because they can't spell it right. So we've been open since about 2023 was when we officially opened. In January of 2023, I had our training on January 2nd or 3rd, and then we've been going. We're about to reach our 2-year mark here in January. Look forward to hearing from everybody.
Congratulations. All right, Mauricio.
Hi, George. Hi, everybody. Martha and my wife, we own Tangerine Sign Studio. We signed the contract with Sign World probably in March, I believe. Probably this week, we're signing the lease contract for the business space. So it took us a while, but hopefully we're going to start soon. And we are in Georgia. We're opening hopefully in Alpharetta.
Very good. All right. Good morning, Lana. How are you?
Morning, George and everybody. I'm Lana Danilova. I signed the contract in February 2024. I am in North California, a little bit east from San Francisco, and yeah, that's all about me.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. All right. I don't have a name for you at Epic Signs and Graphics. If you could share who you are and what you are, if you could, please.
Hi, I'm Jay. I'm from Houston, Texas. We opened the door end of August, and we are fairly new. We recently got the printer installed. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. All right, Jay, thank you. Alan Furman.
Alan Furman, Total Sign Works up in Calgary, Alberta. And I guess we signed last year, but or earlier this year, and then training in February. Had the keys since July, but finally, as of the 4th, got our license and occupancy. And last week got our printers and everything all set up. So starting to move forward finally.
Good, good. Congratulations on that. Teas, out in the Boston area.
Hey, George, Matthias here, Boston, or outside of Boston, and I've been at it since February of this year.
All right, very good. James at Touchstone. James, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you now. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I'm driving to a client, so just want to
Good.
listen in. So we've been in business since around January 2022. So I have a couple of employees now, so just kind of want to check in and kind of keep abreast on the pricing challenge.
Okay. Good luck on that site survey or that client visit. That's awesome. Glad you're out on the road.
Thank
And
you.
Allie.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi, I'm Allie. I work for Orion Signs and Graphics. They opened in June of last year. I do design, production, and a little bit of sales.
Good. Well, welcome to today's adventure, if you will. Okay, Carrie, it's your turn now to share a little bit of who you are, what you are, what's going on, and your unique situation that you're in compared to some of these others that are brick and mortar, if you will.
Sure. My name is Carrie Melnick. I own Mountain High Sign and Design. Like George said, technically I have my first project November 2022. I do kind of count my start January 2023 because that's when my website and everything was up. But I've been in business almost 2 full years. Year-over-year growth is going very well, even with this weird marketing blip that I've been in the middle of right now. I have what I call a virtual model. It's not a broker model, it's a virtual model. I have 2 designers that work for me. I have a project manager that works for me. We outsource all of our fabrication, every single piece of it. And then I have a network of installers. There's 4 who I primarily work with, 2 that do electrical installations, and then 2 that do everything else. And primarily out of the 2 that do everything else, I use one the most, mainly because he's kind of just like turned to my guy. Like he wears all my branded stuff. He basically tells everybody who works directly for me he's a 1099. And he's really, I send him stuff and he gets me my pricing back lickety split, which makes my life easier. A big part of my value prop is speed. I don't have a queue because I outsource all my fabrication, so I can turn things around faster than most shops. I do have people will call me and say, I have something that I need, in 5 days and 7 days, and everyone's telling me there's gonna be a rush, and here comes the exorcism. But can you do it? And I can usually turn it around in a couple of days for people. I don't charge a rush unless I'm charged a rush. And so it is a nice value prop for people who can't seem to get a hold of somebody or their sign company ghosts them. But yeah, so that's me. And then I don't know, George, you want me just to go into it, or you want to?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Really good background. As Carrie mentioned, she doesn't have a shop with all of the equipment. And so by outsourcing so many different things, she's had to work really, really hard at developing relationships with vendors, suppliers, all those contacts. And I guess maybe, unless it's going to be a part of what you're going to share, is how did you find these people to get yourself in this particular situation? Because that's really, really important.
Sure. So when I was doing a lot of my validation calls, once I learned that the majority of owners outsource to some extent their operations, I started finding out who the fabricators were. I do have an edge living in Colorado. I have Royal Printing Solutions in my backyard. Royal is a large format printer, so anything that I need to get printed that's large, that would cost freight from like a 365 or something, I can just go to Royal. They don't charge me by the sheet. They charge me for just what I need. So if I need just a few, something small, they're not charging me for the full sheet like a 365. So that's very helpful. I also have direct sign wholesale in my backyard. They do channel letters. Quality is an issue, so I'm very particular about when I use them. So things on a raceway, because they'll paint the raceway, B2 signs won't paint a raceway. Hunter cabinets that are very large where I'm gonna have to pay freight, I'll go to them. But on other things, I'll use other fabricators, manufacturers, but is basically talking to a lot of owners. I did go and visit as many places as I could in Colorado, and then when I am actually away for other things, if there's a fabricator nearby, I will go stop in and just say hello, just kind of like learn the operation. The one thing I've also learned is that I now have personal buying power. So because I will send like all of my dimensional acrylic business to letters, etc. I have buying power with them. So it's not like anything I need to flex, but like when I wanted terms, it was very easy to get. When I went to them and said, you know, hey, like these things are costing me freight. What can we do about that to help offset the cost? Like they were very open to having that conversation because they send them a significant amount of business. But the relationships are kind of key. It's the people who respond. Also the ones like, I mean, stuff goes wrong. Stuff goes wrong. Like sometimes something's wrong or you get it and it's broken and it's not Letter's fault. It's not my fault. It's UPS's fault, but I still need it. I have an install in 5 days, and so being able to call them and they're like, okay, and they just send it to me and then we figure it out on the back end is very helpful, because we can argue with UPS later. And so it was a lot of conversations with other owners and finding out, hey, who's good, who's bad. I mean, we have something in our mastermind right now, kind of falling behind on it, where we have a don't use vendor list. Like, here's the vendors not to use. And sometimes it's good to know who the pitfalls are. And I try to be very open when people ask me who my fabricators are. It's not a secret. I don't think it's a secret. I'm happy to share. If I'm having a good experience with somebody, I'll tell you about it. And if I've had a not great experience, I'll let you know the context, and then you can make whatever decision that you need to make.
Very
good.
What was your background, by the way? Because you seem to be able to reach out to others without having too much fear about that.
Yeah. So for 11 years coming out of undergrad, it was me and one other individual. It was his business technically, but I built it, and we opened 106 restaurants, nightclubs, and bars across Arizona, Colorado, and New York City. It was an 11-year operation, and we grew it to $10 million. And in that process, I always had to have a sign. So that's kind of like where the link was between these two. I left that, I went into corporate. I think I've just always been somebody who I'm not terribly afraid to ask somebody for help. I'm not terribly afraid to ask somebody for advice. I think the other thing is, like, if somebody comes to me, I'm more than happy to sit down and talk to somebody and share what I know. But also one of the things when I was first talking to Jeannie is she said, you have a ton of owners at your disposal and you should leverage them. And I think I just took her at her word that why shouldn't I? And the more I talk to people were really open. Like when I was having the validation calls, people were telling me about their books, like what they made and their cost of goods. And I was like, holy bonkers, this is like really like personal information. They're like, no, it's totally fine. And I was like, okay, like, and so I very quickly got accustomed to the community and just how people were very transparent with one another. And there's plenty of sign business to go around. Like none of us can do it all. So it doesn't hurt to help other people out. I mean, I think the more that we're all successful, like rising tides, all boats, I definitely believe in that 100%.
Yeah, collaboration. Very good. All right. Well, if we could, unless there's any quick questions for Carrie before she gets into her project, we could go ahead and have her start out and share the one of the jobs that she's completed, I believe, in some way, some form. So go ahead.
No, this one is done. So the project I'm going to share it was for the Center for the Arts Evergreen, which is in Evergreen, Colorado, which is about an hour away from where I'm physically located, which doesn't matter, but people like to know. It's actually something that when the art and science of pricing first started, George would ask, hey, does anybody have a project they want to review? And this was a project that I put out to review, so I thought it was somewhat fitting to come back on as a speaker. And so George and actually Dan, who's on the call, were really helpful for me to figure out, where do I go? What is this? How am I sourcing this? What do I do? So I wanted to bring that project up. I have 2 proofs. The reason there's 2 is because the project was a lot of details, and I was working with creatives. So Center for Arts and Evergreen, they're creative people. Creative people get very overwhelmed with details very, very quickly. So we separated it out into interior and exterior. So I'll go through the project like that. I'll start with the interior signage, and then I'll transition to the exterior signage. And feel free to interrupt or ask questions as we go. Like, don't have to wait.
And before you get into that part of it,
Yeah.
how did this come across your desk?
Oh, they called me. So they were expanding. They had a location and they were adding like an additional wing onto the location, and they needed signage. And they found me, they were doing a Google search, and that's when my marketing was like super great. And I was top of the search. They also really wanted a minority owned, they definitely wanted a woman owned business. And so they'd given me a call. And I said, I'll come out there because that's also something I do. And I don't always charge to go take a look, especially if it's a large project. So I went and I met them, and then they asked for the estimate, and they were very candid. And they said they have 2 other people that they were getting estimates for, but they want minority businesses, they want women owned. And so they told me from the jump, like they were leaning towards me. It was just a matter of if the pricing was right. So,
Good. So you had that edge already. That's wonderful. Okay.
yeah. And that happens a lot where people want a minority business or a woman-owned business. So that part's nice, you know. I'll take it when I can. Okay. So can you all see my screen?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Okay, so I'll start with interior. So this is the interior proof. This is how our proofs look. We have my information on the right, the client's information on the left, and then everything that's included in the proof listed underneath them. So the first thing is just kiss cut vinyl on the door. So like hours of operation, they had a number of doors. This was pretty easy. The one thing that we did go back and forth with them on is they wanted black vinyl on the door. Don't recommend black vinyl. It's really, really hard to see. They wanted it anyway, so we did it. And then when it was on the door, they were like, yeah, you can't see it. So we can't do white vinyl. But something like this, this is something that I will send. I would normally have sent it to Royal back in the day and gotten the pricing on it. Now, my installer, Aaron, actually has a plotter from his former days of having his own company, and he will cut this for me. And I know the cost per door is, he charges me $15 for something like this, and I double it. So that's the cost to the customer.
Now, before you go too much further with this,
Sure.
this is your proposal that you gave to your customer. Is that correct?
This is the proof. So we don't give any type of art until we have a deposit. So but I'll just tell you like how I priced it.
Yeah. So how did you develop your
pricing? So we took the dimensions of when I went out there to visit them, I took a ton of dimensions. So I knew the dimensions of the door, and I knew how many doors there were. So initially, like I said, I had Royal. So I sent Royal a package saying, hey, I need 4 kiss cut operation signs. They're going to be about 24 by 41 inches high. First surface, IJ 180 matte lamb. What's the price? And then they came back to me at the price, and I doubled. I always double by.
All right. So you broke all of this out first and individual pieces of parts before the customer even saw anything at all.
Yes. Yeah.
Got their numbers, and then you said, okay, I'm going to give you a proposal now with what I know I'm going to provide for you as a finished product. Okay.
Yeah, and it's all, I do everything in QuickBooks, so it's all line itemed out. So it'll say window door vinyl, it'll have the dimensions, it'll have the quantity, it'll have the vinyl that I'm using if it has lamination on it, and then it'll have the total cost. Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Okay. I'll be more specific on the next one.
No, that's all right. I just want to make sure, because when some of the things that we assume with new owners is they know all the steps that we've gone through, and they don't, and they need to know, okay, where did you go? What did you do? How did you do it? What did you pull together? How much time did it take? Because there's so many, as you know, in the very beginning, where do I begin?
You don't know anything. Yeah, it's very overwhelming. So this was the second part, is they already have these up. So we were matching existing, they call them donor acknowledgement plaques. And so it's basically, it's an 8x8 frosted piece of acrylic. It's got holes in each corner for standoffs. It's a second surface print, but the frosting is behind the print. So on this one, this took me a minute to kind of figure out how to do because the edges were also frosted. And I was like, well, I can't just lay vinyl on the back of it because I'm not going to get the right effect. There's a plastics company out here that actually has this type of material and they can do the printing. So I reached out to them, same thing. I said, hey, I need, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 8 of them. I need 8 by 8. These are probably 3/16 thick. Yeah, it doesn't say. We've got, oh no, sorry, there's a 1/4 inch deep
thick,
acrylic.
okay.
I need 4 holes in the corner for standoffs that are, whatever size. They don't really need to know that for the estimate, but I need 4 pre-drilled holes. Like second surface print, what's the cost?
How did you find this? How did you find this company that does this?
So it was a lot of asking around. Like I literally just started asking everybody that, like I reached out to all the sign world owners that are here. I've made friends with a number of other sign shops in the state of Colorado. I don't see people as like, oh my gosh, you're my competition, I can't talk to you. Like when I see another sign shop at an event, I go over and I introduce myself because I always feel like you never know. Like you never know when we're gonna come to meet each other. And different people have different strengths. Like there's a company that I met and she has like the longest arm bucket trucks of anybody in the state. And she's really good to have as an ally because sometimes we just, hey, can we either rent your truck or can you guys help us with the installation? And we've got a great relationship. And she's like, sure, it's not in use. It's 90% of the time it's not in use because it's so big, they don't need it. And so it's good to have that in your pocket. So I just started reaching out to everybody and their uncle to find out who would do this. I talked to Royal, they couldn't do it. Royal was kind of searching around, like see who could do it. And then my installer, Aaron, was like, hey, there's this company, you should give them a call. And it was actually Aaron who gave me the name of the company whose name I'm drawing like a complete and total blank on, but let me see if I have it on here. Plastic Care, that's who they are.
And they're located where?
They're here.
Oh, they are in Colorado. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if they're national or not, but they are in Colorado, and so they cut it and they printed it. And then the other piece that you cannot forget about is the standoffs. So I go to MBS standoff to get all of my standoffs also here, but they're national and they'll ship, and I don't think, like we can just go pick it up. So if it's under $150, like we can just go pick it up. It's not a big deal. Otherwise you have to pay for shipping. But I was kind of calculating up how many standoffs I was going to need because you'll see as we go through this, like we needed a hefty amount of standoffs. So I notated down the number of standoffs and then we went into MBS and got the price there. And then on standoffs and things like that, I traditionally only mark it up about 50%, not 100. Just because I don't know, I feel like that's fair. I've had other people tell me they mark it up 100%. I've had people say they mark it up 20%. Kind of seems the market here has tolerance for 50%. So that's what I do.
It's the art and science of pricing signs. Yeah. I'll just throw a dart at the wall.
Yeah. So that was these. This is it's an artist in residence. It's interesting because it's 2 panes of acrylic, and then we have the graphic in between that's basically printed on like a nice poster paper. And the reason it's like that is because they need to swap it out. And so the standoffs, when they swap it out, they unscrew the standoffs, take the first piece of acrylic off, put the new piece in, and then put it back on. And so it's they can just kind of use it. This was actually the idea that I came to them with because they were like, how do we do something like this? And I'd actually seen it at a Banfield pet hospital and a Petco. I saw the double acrylic and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Like you can put something in between. And so I presented that to them because it kept the acrylic look, which they have throughout the entire place. They've got acrylic signs with standoffs throughout. So we were able to stay kind of like within the branding that they had done on the interior of the facility. But so yeah, this was 8.5 by 11. It was, hey, Royal, I need 2 pieces of acrylic pre-drilled holes for this amount and the depth, and then they give me the cost. And something like this, same thing, I double the cost on these. Good. You can also get something like this from like a Science 365, like they can do this as well.
And these are polished edges. I can. It looks like
Say it again.
the edges look like they're polished, flame polished.
Yep. And rounded. We like to do rounded, and all you can do all that at 365. Like they can round the corners for you. The nice thing about 365 is they include the standoffs, so you don't have to take the extra step to MBS. So sometimes 365 is just easier because it's less steps. Same thing here. It's just another one where it's private studio and residence. We did the double piece. We very specifically put these on different pages for them. Again, we're working with creatives. It's pretty good to be detail oriented and organized when you're working with creatives so they can see each individual one. The minute you start putting a lot of things on one page, I find that there's a million questions. So it might seem redundant, but this was very intentional. Same thing, got the cost from Royal and the MBS standoffs. And then we did some restroom signs, some ADA signs. This was, I use All-Star Signs and Graphics in California, formerly owned by George Becker.
I know that company well.
There's a guy there named Mike Cohen. He's a good dude. I work primarily with him right now for my ADAs. I sent him a couple of different ADAs that were artistic just to kind of get an idea of what the cost, because we didn't know what this was going to look like. And I said to him, let's price it for like a few elements instead of just like one flat, like acrylic piece with the braille and tactile on the front. Like they're an art location. Let's do something a little bit nicer. So he priced that for me. He turns it around really quite quickly. And it wasn't that many. But then on this one, and Mike's kind of guided me that I was underpricing it. I learned I was underpricing it at the convention 2 years ago when I heard Peyton talking from Cow Signs. And I was like, you mark up your ADA, how much? So I used to mark up ADA like 80%. Now I mark it up like 120. And I'm fine with that. Like more than that, I feel like, oh, okay, I feel like I'm ripping them off. So that's sort of like my limit. And it's the same thing, like the ADA signs are pretty standard for what you need in terms of the braille and the tactile, and Mike knows all of that. So I just give him the dimensions of the size for what I think I'm gonna need. And then, there's a little bit of room in there because it's marked up the 120. So if they go a little bigger, I don't have to change the size on them. If they go a little slower, I'll scale it down so they feel like they won type of a thing, just kind of like maintain the relationship. And that was it for the interior. Does anybody have any questions?
And what I'd like to comment too, Carrie, is the presentation is really clean. It looks good. It's impressive. So anyone who's not too familiar with signs, they're attractive. They pop. You're letting the customers smell the leather. Now, one of the things I want to comment too about some of the things that you mentioned, and this is really, really important for new owners, is that you need to get out and look around your area. And I'm talking about, it doesn't matter where you go, signage is everywhere. And so you need to see what other people have done, how they fabricated things, what kind of materials did they use. You're involved with an industry that's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and signage is a big element to everything we do, wayfinding or whatever it might be. By having signs that look rich, expensive, you can charge more for them. You really can. You're not competing with price any longer. You're competing with quality and all those things that Carrie talked about with customer service, response time, and being able to get a customer now that's going to continue to come back to you over and over again. So with that, I just want to comment, you've got to go out and, even if it's a monument sign and you've got a cordless drill in your hand, take a couple of nobody's going to really mind as long as you put it back, but take a couple of the side panels off and look inside and see how they built the darn thing. It's going to help you. It really is. Slide the face back in again and secure it and then get the heck out of Dodge. But it's so important. It really is.
And if you do that with a hard hat and a safety vest, you won't get questioned.
That's exactly right. You can do that almost anywhere you go. It's amazing. I'm on military bases walking around and they're going, oh, he must be okay. He's got a hard hat and a safety vest. Okay. You're right, Dan. Good point.
Hey, I have a question.
Okay.
Or George, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
This presentation, is this some type of software that you're using here?
Okay, so this is a template. When you first get started, you might be using like SignPack or Easily or somebody for your design. If you are, ask them to make you a template and then you can leverage that going forward. But basically, my designers work in Adobe Illustrator, but this is effectively, it's a PDF and then we populate it with all of the information for the project, but they build it in Illustrator.
Okay. Thank you.
But yeah, you should, and we've gone through a few renditions. At one point, the font on the right was so freaking small, nobody could read it. So like I was like, we got to make it bigger. And like we put in little notes. I know like All Star Signs and Graphics has a giant red thing on there saying, once you approved, that's it. Like we're moving this forward. There's no changes. And it's like it's like, I'm like, I have that in my terms and conditions that once you approve the proof, like it's gone into production. If you want to make changes after that, you're going to have to pay for them. And I make people sign my terms and conditions. So it just depends on how you want to do it. But yeah, this is it's a template and you should have one for your company.
And terms of and conditions are really, really important for your business. If you don't have them and you need them, you can reach out to other owners to see what they have. In some cases, they're even on their website and you can talk to them and say, you know, where did you get it? How'd you get it? But very, very important. That's going to help you reduce errors in the future and costs that you're going to continue to be surprised by as you continue to move forward with your business. And then you're going to make those corrections in your business to prevent that from happening again in the future. So that's very, very important. Okay, Carrie, let's go on to the exterior.
Okay, so here's the exterior. This is the new wing of their building. So you'll notice some of its renderings in the proof, but when we started, I had their plans, and if you're not familiar with looking through plans, you'll learn at some point, and it's great fun. But so I had their plans, and they wanted Maureen K. Scott Ceramics Studio in backlit channel letters to match the channel letters that they have on the front of their facility that says Center for the Arts Evergreen. That's also black and pink. So, and they wanted it all the same size. So it was kind of easy because when I was there, I'd measured the channel letters and then I went to B2 and I plugged the whole thing in and I got the price immediately. And then I also went to Direct Sign Wholesale just to compare. And I got their pricing. B2 usually always beats them. And B2 leaves a lot of room for extra margin, but I still only mark it up 100%. I know there's additional room because if it was DSW, like I'd have room, but it makes me more competitive not doing that. Like when it's DSW, I tend to only mark up about 85%. So like B2 gives me a little bit more room. If I mark up DSW 100%, I'm too expensive. This is what I've heard across the board. You're so expensive compared to everybody else, but the B2 prices are much better, so I'm able to add a little bit to my margin. But I knew the dimensions and the plans, so I had my designer. I said, hey, this is the size letters they want. Will they fit? Was the question to him. Like, will it fit if we do this size letters, given how many there are? And he said yes. So that's what I priced it at. When we were going through permitting, the weird thing is the city had a problem with the color. The color has to match the exterior facade in Evergreen, so we weren't actually able to do the black. We had to do this weird grayish black. Seemed like a weird thing for the city to weigh in on, but otherwise it was exactly what we priced. We just had that color change based on the city.
And the city had plans already showing the existing letters that were already approved prior. Is that correct?
Yeah, they were on a different structure though, and they matched that structure. And because this was a new structure, there's nothing grandfathered in, so they weren't able to match them.
Wow. Okay.
To be fair, you can't even see the two from each other. Like the initial letters are on one side of the drive, and this is all the way on the back. Because they were really upset when the city came back with that. And I said, you're welcome to call the city and talk to them. Like, hearing from the business can't hurt. The city could have cared less. But then when I went back out there and I walked them around and I said, nobody's going to tell a 4-degree difference in the gradient of the black
Right.
from there to here. I was like, so I don't think it's the end of the world. I think we're okay. And they were like, okay, so sometimes you just got to hold their hands a little bit. But so these were stud mounted because they were backlit. This is also like, I put the whole package together and I give it to the installers that I'm gonna use, and I get their pricing. For installation, I only mark up about 20%. Just kind of nature. I can't really mark up too much on installation. So, right. So 27 letters, 11 and 11.4 inches. So not a small sign. All right. And this one is the one that I love. So this one we went through like 8,000 renditions. Initially, and Dan, I don't know if you remember this, but initially when I was on the call, they wanted a very artistic illuminated sign in front of this stone wall, not attached to it, in front of it. And I was like, good grief, like what are we gonna do? And how in the world do I price that? And so I started putting together different ideas, and we ended up pricing them for a 3-dimensional cube. So it was like basically 3 cubes. So the C, the A, the E, and they were kind of like all off center, so it looked interesting. LED illuminated, single standing, bolted to the ground. Like that's what we priced them for. And we did the proof for it also. And then the board came back and said, no, absolutely not. We hate this thing. And so then the board said, we want it attached to the stone and it needs to be more subtle. And so we ended up pricing, I actually got these from Gemini. They're metal letters. It's a brushed bronze. So it looks bronze, but it won't patina or anything like that. And then the A has this interesting swirl in it. And this was a huge point of contention in terms of like the drill bit size. I'll try to get in as close as I can, but when you get into the corners here, like it's a point and it's hard to get the drill into there, but Gemini, they really worked with me on it and they figured out how to do it. So this was one where like after I had priced this giant box structure that was much more expensive, and I went to them and I always tell people change order scaling down or up. I tell people a price. And I said, okay, the price for this new one is X. It'll be a difference of this. Are you comfortable with that? And they were like, yes, but I make sure it's in an email and it's clear the price is changing, whether it's going up or down. I just want people to be very clear. So yeah, so this one with Gemini though, I did double it because there was a ton of room in the budget and I figured why not? Normally I probably would have done this at about 80%.
What did they choose there, Carrie? And what was the thickness of the material?
The thickness of the material was a 1/2 inch.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. They wanted it to be substantial.
That is substantial.
It was. I have a picture of it after the fact, and it looks awesome. But it's a brushed bronze, not brushed copper. We did a brushed bronze to get
less expensive.
Yes, to get the look that they want.
Was it aluminum with a anodized brushed bronze finish?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. But I do remember like we were in fabrication and Gemini called and said, oh, I don't know that we can do the swirl. And I said, no, you told me that you could do the swirl. So you got to figure it out. And they were like, okay. And then they came back 2 days later and said, no, we figured it out. I was like, cool, good for you. Like I already talked to my customer about this. You committed, so figure it out.
No does not work here. And something else to understand, Gemini is a good vendor for all of the owners. If you haven't received, and I know most of their catalogs are online now, but you can get a hard copy of their catalog and also get samples from them because they're really good to share with your customers. It's really, really important. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So this is just we're giving them like 1 million views so they can see it. Yeah, Dan, what's up?
Is the CAE, is that concave?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
it has a little bit of a round to it, a little bit. It's very slight, but yes.
So that's how all those crazy conversations turned out. It looks great.
Nice.
And that's not an easy thing to do with 1/2 inch aluminum.
No, it's not. It was definitely a challenge for sure, but that was the look they wanted. And when I was talking, so if you send enough business to Gemini, you can become part of like they have different sales teams that you can send in your estimates to, and you get them back quickly. And it's like a dedicated team instead of going into the massive pool of Gemini people. And so I'm part of that. And so I had a conversation with one of them and said, hey, this is the thing that I want to do for an art complex. It needs to not just be like some flat lettering. Like it's got to have some texture, some dimension to it. And so it was a couple conversations with the production team and like figuring out how to do it. And I'm wondering if the half inches, maybe we did go down a little bit. I have to look, but the round was a big part of it. Like we didn't want it to just sit flat on the stone.
Good. Very good.
And sometimes I do think like there's nothing wrong with pushing the fabricators. Like it gets uncomfortable. They're like, I've never done it before, and just feel like, okay, well, why don't we try it now? Like, what's the harm in let's give it a go. Do a sample piece. Can we see if it'll work? And then a lot of times they come back and like, hey, it worked. And it's like, okay, let's do it. Like it's something you can offer now to people too. Like everybody wins. Right. I don't think it's bad to push them a little bit. So just more of that. And then we had the wayfinding signs. And these were weird at first to figure out. They had actually sent me a picture of what they wanted. Theirs were incredibly narrow, very, very high. They wanted real wood, they wanted real stone masonry around the bottom. And I sourced all of that based on, like, Dan had given some good advice about where to go to get all these pieces put together. And I talked to my installer about, hey, here's all the parts. And he was like, yeah, we can put all this together, because he's got like a huge shop. And he was like, it doesn't cost him a fortune, Carrie. And I was like, yeah, no, I know. And he was like, you should look into the faux route. And I was like, okay. And so I called Peachtree and I said, hey, if you want to do something like this where it looks like wood on top, stone on the bottom, and then these two pieces, like wings basically coming out that are bracketed in on the inside with molly bolts, is this something that we could do? And Mike was like, yeah, we could do that. And so I got the price from Peachtree. The thing about Peachtree that's always unfortunate is the freight. It's so expensive. So I generally mark up Peachtree stuff about 60%, and then there's the shipping cost. And I've had it where I've tried more and I've lost it. I've had it where I've tried less and I win very quickly, and then I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's probably pretty low. But the shipping I do pull out separate and I show them. I don't hide from people that I'm getting it from somewhere else. And I'm like, that's just the freight. There's nobody local that does that. Right. But I basically gave them the dimensions that the customer had originally given me, which was much taller than this and much more narrow. But then when we were actually doing the design and the engineering, like it wouldn't have worked because of the panels, because the wind, it wouldn't have, the city didn't like it. So they made us go shorter and fatter. And this is what we ended up doing.
Yeah, you look like almost like a weapon now, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of it, but they like it, and that's kind of all that matters.
So those are Peachtree?
Yeah, these are Peachtree. The post, the wood, and the masonry on the bottom are Peachtree. The panels are ACM, double-sided prints that I got at Royal.
And okay. they go into brackets that they had built inside the Peachtree monument to secure that mounting to that, so they wouldn't just like pull out. Yeah. Great. Yep.
And then this I think is just placement. Oh, and then this is the last thing. They had actually seen, they'd gone on my website and they'd seen some signs that they really liked. This is a sign I did for somebody else. It was an ADA sign, but they really liked the look of it. But it's exterior. You don't need to have tactile and braille outside, but they just wanted to let people know the accessible entrance is this way. Here's the main entrance, just because they were in different spots, but they loved the look of this. So we ended up just doing a direct print on ACM for this. We pre-drilled the holes, and then this was, we just bolted it in with a hex lag screw just so that it stayed nice.
Good looking sign. Very good.
Yeah. And so that was that. And again, this is 100% markup from Royal, and that's the end of the ballgame.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any questions that anyone might have for Carrie? She does talk pretty quick. She
Sorry.
gets through things pretty quick. She's very efficient, which is great. That's what I like about her. Gets to the point. Let's go from there. Eric, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so two things from start to finish. What was your time frame and what was the price of this job to the customer?
So from start to finish is tricky, right? Because we started when they said they wanted to start, and then their construction got delayed, which is hard for the course when you're building something. So originally we had wanted to have everything up by February, so that way when they opened in March it was all up, and then their opening didn't actually happen until May. So they actually asked for a little bit of delay because they wanted to make sure things were going smoothly. So we did the interior first, and then there was like a long pause, and then we did the exterior. They actually added an outdoor mural, which is not an improved because it was separate. But the cost on the project, it was $39,000 for the whole project.
How much time did you, let me re-ask the time. So when you got the call to when you delivered for you at your, like, what did that look like?
From the time I got the call to give them the estimate to the time the project was finished, it was about 6.5 months because they ran into the construction issues. Had they not run into construction issues, it would have been done in probably 3. The biggest thing that we were waiting on that like is always our holdup is the permit, but the permit came pretty fast.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And what you're going to find too, and Carrie's found this out, and I'm going to guess Dan has as well, is that in construction projects, you're going to be pulled into the project maybe very, very early on before they have even put a shovel in the dirt. And they'll tell you that, yeah, we expect you to be out here in 8 or 9 months, something like that.
Yeah.
But we need your submittal package right now.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, okay, why do you need my submittal package? Because I'm going in at the end of this. Now, one of the important aspects of what I believe construction projects bring to our business is it's work that we have in the future. So if we're working on something today, we sell it today, we know we're going to be we need to be in business a year from now because that's when we're going to be installing this. So now we start to build up our work in process with all of our different projects that we have going on. Now we have a project management situation where we're juggling, we're spinning the plates, whatever. Remember that guy that was up on the stage spinning the plates and run over and spin another plate. It's keeping all of these balls in the air and not dropping any. And so what's really important is the communication part. And what I want to say about that is if you can set up something with your contractor where you'll reach out to them every week, might be every Thursday, might be every Friday, but at 8 a.m., whatever day it is, I'm going to call you, see where you're at, what's going on. As you get closer to the installation time for the project, you need to go and visit the site because they're going to lie to you. They're going to tell you they're ready and they're not. The walls aren't painted, the doors aren't up, the carpet's not down. They don't trust that the sign person is going to be in there to be able to finish the job so they can turn the keys over. So the super that's on the job is going to be pressing, pushing, and yelling and screaming. It's going to be completely different than who you've dealt with the estimator, whoever's awarded you the contract. But understand, it all works out. It all works out as long as you communicate really, really well with your customer. Dan's laughing because he's been down this road too. But right? I mean, these are the important aspects of it. Now, let's reduce that down to regular customers that you might have. Communication is so important. It really is. And Carrie brought up some good points here, is not to have fear that your customer is going to want to go somewhere else because you're using somebody else. They've got so many other important things that they're trying to deal with that it's okay that they hear from you as long as you're honest with them and tell them, I've had a delay, or my vendor has let me down, or I expect to be out there at a certain time. Put a few days in there as a gap because your vendor may say, I'm going to ship it to you for sure on Wednesday. You'll have it by Friday. If Friday comes and you call up your vendor and the vendor says, oh, we haven't shipped it yet. But well, I already told my customer we would be out here today and now I don't have it. What am I going to tell them? Well, that's your problem. So try to get to know your suppliers and your vendors really well so you can hedge them a little bit and follow up with them, because even though they promise they're going to ship it, make sure you give them a call too. to follow up. So these systems and things you have to have in place to be able to continue to constantly, don't assume anything. That's my point. It's continue to communicate.
I have a customer that I won because I've never missed a deadline. Their previous sign company missed a deadline and they dropped them like a hot potato.
Yeah, that's simple. And you communicated where you were, and you continue to follow up on your supplier better, whatever you're doing, to make sure you hit those times in those dates, right?
This customer is a set designer.
Oh, nice.
For example, they did the set for the 2024 NFL draft. They're not going to delay the draft because the channel letters are a day or two late.
It does not work well. This is going on national TV. Well, it's the same thing as Super Bowls. They set that up 6-8 weeks before the event.
Yeah.
To make sure it's all done and good looking. All right. Any other questions that someone might have out there?
The only thing I would say like about setting expectations is like, if it's like we just had one where the customer, they were hoping to get the keys turned over to them from our new location on the 14th, and then they wanted to have their opening on the 17th. And so she was like, can we have the sign up on this very specific day? She wanted it up like on the 9th or whatever. And so I said, fine. But then I told the fabricator I need the sign by the 5th. And it just bought me 4 days in case, who knows, right? And it was good because they were delayed. And so then we didn't have to make any changes, but they were delayed, but everything works out in the end. So I would say like sometimes, like, especially when the deadlines are tight, buffer in time when you're putting it in for fabrication. Like, don't wait till the last minute, and don't tell your fabricator I need it the day before. Tell them you need it a couple of days before. That way you have a buffer as well.
Right.
Fabricators lie to you, so you should lie to your customers.
It's true. They'll tell you, oh yeah, absolutely, and then you'll show up and the sign's still being painted, and you're like, cool, that's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so Carrie, what have you learned from that project, and what did you do different moving forward?
What did I learn from this project? I learned a lot about sourcing very different things. Because I had never done a peach tree before that. I had never done frosted acrylic in the way that this was. I'd never done the sandwiched acrylic. And then we also did an outdoor mural that we ended up putting on aluminum. And it's on standoffs. The one thing that was interesting about that is they had like it approved and everything, and it was up, and then they realized they forgot a donor. And so they needed to reprint it. And that was going to be expensive for them. And it was like the 11th hour. And so I called Royal and said, is there any chance I could bring it back and we print on the other side? And you just charge me for the printing. And it kind of goes with like when you've got great relationships, and they were like, sure. And so they didn't charge me it was a 10 by 8, it was a really big thing. And Royal was like, that's fine. And so that was kind of like a nice thing to be able to do for them. But I did learn also, and I say this, the hardware and stuff, like it changed, and I was really diligent about letting them know when cost changed, but not the hardware. And so at the end, when the hardware cost was a few $100s, but it's definitely something that they were like, why didn't you tell me about this? And I was like, I don't know. Like everything, like, I don't know. Like, I just didn't. And back then I didn't have a terms and conditions. And so there was a couple of things like the way that we do design is I'll give you a design cost, and that's for the initial plus 2 revisions. And then everything after that is an additional design hour. And I didn't have that anywhere. So and again, working with creatives, you're high likelihood that you're going to go over that. And so when we got to that point, it was really awkward to be like, hey, you're past, and they were like, oh, but we're paying all this for design. And I was like, yeah, but we're on like round 20, you know what I mean? And it's so like, that was uncomfortable. And so then I think Dan, you actually were the one who gave me your terms and conditions, and I was like, okay, I need to start using something like this. And it does make it a lot easier, because when I have customers who, we go past it, and I'm like, okay, and I'll tell them, I'm like, hey, you're past what you've paid for design, so it's going to be an additional hour. And they're like, oh, what, and then I send them the TNC, and they're like, oh, okay.
Right.
And I don't want to ruin the relationship, but sometimes when you show somebody like, hey, like I was upfront with you up front, and they're like, all right, like some people just like to scream and hair on fire, but they settle down. But
Right.
I think the big thing was the terms and conditions. Like I did not have that in place. This was a very large project. There was no contract. So I think that is something that like, I was like, okay, like I need to have something like that going forward.
Yeah,
Yep.
you have to grow up.
Yeah.
The with this project, it was a great looking project, by the way. You really did a wonderful job with it. Do you have any idea what your overall margin was, profitability wise, was on that?
The overall was around 70%.
Very good.
Because I needed a bit on installation, but then I was over 100 on other things, and so it kind of rounded out to around 70.
So did you break out as line items what your design and samples, project
Yeah,
management?
everything has a
That was a separate line item. Okay.
Yeah. So it starts at the top. It starts with design because I try to go in order of how the project's going to go. So design is the first one. Project management is usually above or below design. And then I've got the permit costs. Then I always put in engineering just in case. I tell people some cities require it, some don't. If we don't need it, I'll take it out, but I'd rather it's in and then I take it out later. And then I have kind of like the order that will go on. So I usually list the exterior signage fabrications first, then interior, and then I do installation, and I do break out installation from interior to exterior just so that they can see. Because with trucks and stuff, exterior is more expensive, and you just give them this one lump sum. Usually they're like, I don't understand why is it so costly. But if you break it out interior for exterior, and it's like, well, hey, I need to have a bucket truck and 2 people to put your sign up, they're like, oh, okay, well that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. And after the job is over with, do you go back? Not on every job, but do you go back to the job and actually measure to see how you did on each line item? Because if you can, that'll help you with the next project, right?
Yeah, I should. And I now have a bookkeeper, and that's part of like the reporting that he's gonna be doing is like stuff like that. I feel like I generally know, but I mean, who knows? I'm probably off. But no, I don't do that. I know on design exactly because I know what I'm bringing in, and then I know what I'm paying to my designers, and I know on installation, right? And I could go through and do the rest, but I don't generally do that.
Okay. And it is helpful because as you're going through these projects and you're doing these things, if you don't have any idea what your true costs are and what your markup is, then you can't make adjustments moving forward. And so you assume certain things, and then later on when you look at your numbers a month down the road or whatever it might be, well, why didn't we make any money? Well, that's because of all these other things that happened that we didn't even review. So I think it's important just to circle back every once in a while. You don't have to do it on every job, but to get an idea where your estimates are and how they're working out with the end result, because there are surprises that come up. There just are. And you want to be able to prepare for that and be able to charge your customer accordingly. And we talked about this before. One of the things that I like to share is you don't want to eat the freight. And sometimes we forget that we have freight and then we're not charging our customers. So make sure everything you're doing, you're charging for as you get through that. Go ahead, Dan.
I do have a question, Carrie. On your estimates to customers, do you specify sales tax? Or do you put sales tax as one of your terms?
No, it's right on the estimate because you only tax, like at least here, I don't know what other people are, but you only tax on the goods. So like design and installation are not taxed, but the goods are. So it's right on there. It has it. It's right at the bottom, right above the total.
Okay.
The only other thing that I would add to this is like on a large project like these, I tend to, after it's been installed, go back and walk around with the customer and just kind of, I think it's nice. Like they kind of rave about it and it tees it up really nicely for, can you give me a review? But I like to kind of go back over and just, hey, what do you think? And was it as planned, what you expected? And it's a good chance to also get some feedback from them.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Very good. All right. Well, unless there's any other questions, we're at the top of the hour. Carrie, thank you so much for your time today and sharing this project. It was really terrific. It was good to see all of you today. And I wish you good luck in your future sales, profitability. Get out there, meet new customers. Dan? Want to say goodbye?
There's a question in chat. I will send my terms to you, George, that you can distribute to everyone on the call.
Okay, very good. All right, very good. Till next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay profitable. All right. Thank you again.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
bye guys.